Hello everybody, my name is Kathleen Mary Joyce Iabiera and my topic is all about normative ethics. Normative ethics is a study of moral behavior. It is a branch of ethics that looks into the set of questions that arise when thinking about how one should conduct normally. Normative ethics differs from meta-ethics in that it explores the meaning of moral language and the metaphysics of moral facts. To put in another way, descriptive ethics is concerned with establishing the percentage of people who feel killing is always immoral, but normative ethics is concerned with whether such a belief is true. As a result, normative ethics is often referred to as prescriptive rather than descriptive. Moral facts, on the other hand, are both descriptive and prescriptive in certain varieties of meta-ethical approach known as moral realism. Normative ethics, also known as moral philosophy, has traditionally been the study of what makes actions right or bad. These ideas provided an overarching moral standards to which one may resort while making moral decisions. Our next topic is virtue ethics. Virtue ethics is a broad term for theories that emphasize the role of character and virtue in moral philosophy, rather than either doing one's duty or acting in order to bring about good consequences. A virtue ethicist is likely to give you this kind of advice: act as a virtuous person will act in your situation. Most virtue ethics theories take their inspiration from Aristotle, who declared that a virtuous person is someone who has ideal character traits. Socrates was one of the first Greek philosophers to encourage both scholars and ordinary citizens to focus on the state of humanity rather than the outside world. Knowledge relevant to human life was prioritized, while all other knowledge was considered secondary. Self-awareness was regarded as both required for success and fundamental virtue. A self-aware individual will behave to the best of his skills, but an uninformed person will flounder and experience hardship. To achieve self-knowledge, according to Socrates, a person must become aware of every fact significant to his existence. He claimed that if people know what is right, they will automatically do it. Ignorance is the cause of evil or harmful behavior. If a criminal genuinely understood the intellectual and spiritual ramifications of his actions, he would not commit or even consider committing them. According to Socrates, everyone who knows that what is truly right would automatically do it, while he correlated knowledge with virtue. He similarly equated virtue with joy. True wisdom is knowing what is right, doing what is good, and thus being happy.
Ethics. What is the word ethics? The word ethics in English refers to several things. It can refer to philosophical ethics or moral philosophy, a project that attempts to use reason in order to answer various kinds of ethical questions. As the English philosopher Bernard William writes, attempting to explain moral philosophy. What makes an inquiry a philosophical one is reflective generality and a style of argument that claims to be rationally persuasive. And William describes the content of this area of inquiry as addressing the very broad question, how one should live. Epicureanism. Epicurean ethics, is a hedonist form of virtue ethics. Epicurus presented a sustained argument that pleasure, correctly understood, will coincide with virtue, and he rejected the extremism of the Cyrenaics, believing some pleasures and indulgence to be detrimental to human beings. Epicureans observed that indiscriminate indulgence sometimes resulted in negative consequences. Some experiences were therefore rejected out of hand, and some unpleasant experiences endured in the present to ensure a better life in the future. To Epicurus, the summum bonum, or greatest good, was prudence, Exercise through moderation and caution. Excessive indulgence can be destructive to pleasure and can even lead to pain. For example, eating one food too often will cause a person to lose taste for it. Eating too much food at once will lead to discomfort and ill health. Metaethics. Metaethics asks how we understand, know about, and what we mean when we talk about what is right and what is wrong. An ethical question fixed on some particular practical question, such as should I eat this particular piece of chocolate cake? Cannot be a meta-ethical question. A meta-ethical question is abstract and relates to a wide range of more specific practical questions. For example, is it ever possible to have secure knowledge of what is right and wrong? Would be a meta-ethical question. Metaethics has always accompanied philosophical ethics. For example, Aristotle implies that less precise knowledge is possible in ethics than in other spheres of inquiry, and he regards ethical knowledge as depending upon habit and acculturation in a way that makes it distinctive from other kinds of knowledge.
So next is Aristotle. Aristotle posited an ethical system that may be termed as self-realizationism. Nature does nothing in vain. Ill, therefore, it is imperative for people to act in accordance with their nature and develop their latent talents in order to be content and complete. Happiness was held to be the ultimate goal. All other things, such as civic life or wealth, are merely means to the end. In Aristotle's view, when a person acts in accordance with his nature and realizes his full potential, he will do good and be content. At birth, a baby is not a person, but a potential person. To become a real person, the child's inherent potential must be realized. And happiness and frustration are caused by the unrealized potential of a person, leading to failed goals and a poor life. Aristotle argued that what people fundamentally desired is happiness, or what the interpreters called as eudaimonia. His virtue ethics can be extracted from the Nicomachean Ethics, the first systematic study of ethics in Western civilization. He believed that happiness is the ultimate human good. But what is the nature of happiness? Or what does happiness consist in? We must be noted that Aristotle did not just ask about the nature of happiness, because according to what I've researched, that in Nicomachean Ethics, he raised the question concerning the conditions of its attainment, which eventually led Aristotle to the discussion of virtue. As a result, Aristotle's virtue ethics is ultimately linked to a thorough grasp of both the nature of happiness as humanity's ultimate purpose and the concept of virtue. Furthermore, Aristotle's understanding of virtue differs from what Plato and Socrates, because for Aristotle, happiness consists only in virtuous activity. The interpreters of Aristotle call happiness as eudaimonia. It is the ultimate end of human life, in which it is genuinely desired for its own sake, or without qualification. So actions that lead to this end are the most valuable and cannot be surpassed by actions that lead to ordinary kinds of ends. Of course, actions that lead to honor, wealth, and power are certainly part of man's tendency to seek happiness as pleasure, but this cannot be the end that results to true happiness. Aristotle does not condemn man for desiring pleasure, because it is a significant part of human flourishing. But for him, the desire and action that lead to pleasure only presuppose limited value, since its end is temporary. The satisfaction that one gets from these actions cannot be truly called happiness. For Aristotle, these actions which only lead humans into the pit of two opposing vices, either excess or deficiency. drive them away from the ultimate end, or what Aristotle's interpreter called eudaimonia. Hence, for Aristotle, only virtuous acts can lead to true happiness. In philosophy, everything in nature has a purpose. Therefore, everything is directed toward the form of the good. This means in nature, we can make our own choices, and not just to respond to a stronger impulse. Saying this, we are fully capable of developing our rationalities or not. Aristotle said that we have the natural purpose to develop our rationality to a degree, meaning we can make the utmost use out of our rationality in life, which leads us to realize of full potential. Next is the Aristotle three natures of a man. These are vegetable or the nutritive, animal or the sensitive locomotive, and lastly is the rational. These three corresponds to plants, animals, and humans. The vegetable is about physical or metabolism of a man. A physical nature can be assuaged through exercise and care. Animal is about our emotional or appetite, emotional nature through indulgence of instinct and urges, while rational is about our mental or conceptual. This mental nature is through human reason and developed potential. Rational development was considered the most important as essential to philosophical self-awareness and as uniquely human. Aristotle's Golden Mean. The basic principle of the Golden Mean laid down by Aristotle 2,500 years ago is moderation, or striving for a balance between extremes. Moderation, in which Aristotle described as the desirable middle between two extremes. For example, in the Aristotelian view, courage is a virtue that, when used excessively, manifests as recklessness, and when used insufficiently, manifests as cowardice. Similarly, in the practical context of our daily lives, this golden mean can be applied to a student who, if he or she does not take an exam, is likely to fail, yet taking the exam on time will ensure good scores, and leaving the exam hall before 1 hour will result in worse grades. You see that in all kinds of acts and activities, there is a shift in balance. Next is Epictetus' Stoicism. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus posited that the greatest good was contentment and serenity. Peace of mind, or aphatheia, was of the highest value. Epictetus said difficult problems in life should not be avoided, but rather embraced. Epictetus was a Stoic philosopher who lived in the 1st century, approximately 400 years after the founding of Zeno of Citium Stoic School in Athens. He is from the lowest class because he is a slave, but still he became one of the greatest Stoic philosophers. He indicates that Stoicism isn't just for the elite, because it is for everyone. His works reveal the importance of tranquility and that we should value these over lesser things, like money, reputation, and even the body. Epictetus said that a calm mind, or aphatheia, is not achieved by trying to alter and control our surroundings. It is achieved by the way we think. Whatever overcomes us is the way of the universe. There's no need to force things. So when we are sick, we shouldn't force ourselves to do things we cannot do. In many cases, the best way to treat an illness is by accepting it and doing what's best for us in that given moment. Epictetus also stated that illness is a hindrance to the body, but not to our ability to choose, which doesn't mean that we should force ourselves to perform our duties, which might only make it worse. It means that despite the physical hindrance, we still can choose to make rational choices in a more tranquil fashion. For example, we have observed two extremes in the COVID-19 epidemic. On one side, there is terror, and on the other, there is a complete lack of concern. Some people are overcome by fear and emotion, while others refuse to perceive the problem and maybe strive to appear tough. It's crucial to remember that sickness and death are a natural part of life, no matter how we react. In addition, Epictetus also states that abstinence is highly desirable. Epictetus said remaining abstinent in the face of temptation was a victory for which a man could be proud. Well, I agree because in my opinion, tempting your body on different kind of temptations too much is lack of control to yourself in which can result in the anguish of our minds.
Bioethics is a broad term for theories to emphasize the role of character and virtue and moral philosophy rather than either doing duty or acting in order to bring out a good consequence. Contemporary ethics theory. It turns divided into ethical theory and normative. Ethical theory concerns itself with a question, what is semiotical status of ethical word such as good, duty, obligation, and right. Hedonism, the pursuit of pleasure. The ethical theory that pleasure is the highest good and the proper aim for human life. And ethical hedonism started by Aristotle by Cyrene, who held the idea the pleasure is the highest good. Hedonism is prioritizing pleasure over the life values and theorized to be independent of well-being. However, popular culture depicts the hedonist is unhappy, as well as selfishly unconcerned with other well-being. Cyrenius is a hedonist and held that pleasure was the supreme good in life, especially physical pleasure, which they thought most intense, most durable than mental pleasure. A pleasure is the only thing that good in life, and pain is the one and only evil.
Ethics or moral philosophy is a branch of philosophy that involves systematizing, defending, and recommending concepts of right and wrong conduct. So the term ethics derives from the ancient Greek word ethikos, which derived from the word ethos, means character. So that is used to describe the guiding beliefs or ideals that characterize a community, nation, or ideology. So the branch of philosophy, axiology, comprises the sub-branches of ethics and aesthetics. So each with concerned values. So as a branch of philosophy, ethics investigates the question, what is the best way people to live? And what actions are right or wrong in particular circumstances? So in practice, ethics seeks to resolve questions of human morality by defending concepts such as good and evil, right and wrong, and virtue and vice. So as a field of intellectual inquiry, moral philosophy is also related to the fields of moral psychology, descriptive ethics, and value of theory. So, madami ding iba't ibang tao na nag-define ng ethics. Kagaya na lang ni Rushworth Kidder na dinefine niya ang ethics as standard definition of ethics have typically included such phrases as the science of ideal human character or the science of moral duty. So, according naman sa the Cambridge Dictionary of Philosophy, the word ethics is commonly used interchangeably with morality, and sometimes it is used more narrowly to mean the moral principles of particular tradition, group, or individual. So, isa pa yung sinabi ni Paul and Adler na ang ethics daw ay behaving in accordance with social conventions, religious beliefs, and the law, and don't treat ethics as a stand-alone concept. So, sila lang naman yung mga nag-define ng ethics at yung mga definition nila ng ethics. So there are three major areas of ethics. So the first one is the meta-ethics. So meta-ethics asks how we understand, know about, and what we mean when we talk about what is right and what is wrong. So an ethical question fixed on some particular practical questions such as should I eat this piece of chocolate cake? So this cannot be a meta-ethical question. So a meta-ethical question is abstract and relates to a wide range of more specific practical questions. So, for example, is it possible to have secure knowledge of what is right and wrong? So, this would be a meta-ethical question. So, meta-ethics has always accompanied philosophical ethics. So, kagaya na lang, example na lang is yung inimply ni Aristotle that less precise knowledge is possible in ethics than in other spheres of inquiry. So, and hiniregard niya din doon na ethical knowledge as defending upon habit and acculturation in a way that makes it distinctive from other kinds of knowledge. So, the 20th century saw a remarkable expansion and evolution of critical theory. Following on earlier Marxist theories to locate individuals within larger structural frameworks of ideology and action. So, anti-humanists such as Louis Althusser and Foucault, structuralists such as Ronald Barthes challenged the possibility of individual agency and the coherence of nation of individual itself. So, as a critical theory developed in the later 20th century, post-structuralism sought to problematize human relationships to knowledge and objective reality. So, post-structuralism and postmodernism argue that ethics must study the complex and relational conditions of action. So, a simple alignment of ideas of right and particular act is not possible. So, there will always be an ethical remainder that cannot be taken into account or often even recognized. So, such as theories find narrative. So, to be a helpful tool for understanding ethics because narrative is always about particular lived experiences in all their complexity rather than the assignment of idea or norm to separate and individual actions. So, Hoy's post-critic model uses the term ethical resistance. So, examples of this would be an individual's resistance to consumerism in a retreat to a simpler but perhaps harder lifestyle, or individual's resistance to a terminal illness. So, Hoyes described Levina's account as not the attempt to use power against itself or to mobilize sectors of the population to exert their political power. So, the ethical resistance is instead the resistance of the powerless. So, it also concludes that the ethical resistance of the powerless others to our capacity to exert power over them is therefore what imposes an enforceable obligation on us. So, the obligations are unenforceable precisely because of the other's lack of power. So, the actions are at once obligatory and at the same time unenforceable. It is what put them in a category of ethical. So, obligations were not enforced by the virtue of the force behind them. So, not be freely undertaken and would not be realm of the ethical. So, the second one is the normative ethics. So, normative ethics is the study of ethical action. So, it is the branch of ethics that investigates the set of questions that arise when considering how one ought to act morally speaking. So, normative ethics is distinct from meta-ethics because it examines standards for the rightness of wrongness of actions, while meta-ethics studies the meaning of moral language and the metaphysics of moral facts. So, normative ethics is also distinct from descriptive ethics. So, as the latter is an empirical investigation of people's moral beliefs. So, to put it in another way, descriptive ethics would be concerned with determining what proportion of people believe that killing is always wrong. So while normative ethics concerned with whether it is correct to hold such as behavior. So normative ethics is sometimes called prescriptive, so rather than descriptive. So, however, on a certain version of the meta-ethical view called moral realism, moral facts are both descriptive and prescriptive at the same time. So, normative ethics, or also known as the moral theory, was the study of what makes actions right or wrong. So the last one is the virtue ethics. So virtue ethics describe the character of moral agent from meta-ethics because it examines standards for the rightness and wrongness of action. So while meta-ethics studies the meaning of moral language and the metaphysics of moral facts. So we all know that self-knowledge was considered necessary for success and inherently an essential good. So a self-aware person will act completely within his capabilities to his pinnacle, with an ignorant person will flounder and encounter difficulty. So according to Socrates, a person must become aware of every fact and its context, so relevant to his existence, if he wishes to attain self-knowledge. So he posited that people will naturally do what is good if they know what is right. So evil or bad actions are results of ignorance. So if a criminal was truly aware of the intellectual and spiritual consequences of his action, he would neither commit nor even consider committing those actions. So any person who knows what is truly right will automatically do it, according to Socrates. So while he correlated knowledge with virtue, so he similarly equated virtue with joy. So the truly wise man will know what is right, do what is good, and therefore be happy.